when plans surface to relocate Andrew from Royal Lodge to a modest Sandringham property, or potentially to a luxury setup in Bahrain. Many assume the transition was strategic, but the reality inside the estate tells another story: denial, disarray, and a man unready to leave. Andrew's resistance isn't just about square footage, it's about letting go of the last remnants of authority and routine. Despite the public disgrace linked to Epstein and his shrinking royal role, his life at Royal Lodge remains untouched, protected by emotional inertia and piles of untouched possessions.
If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update.
The move isn't just physical, it's symbolic. And Andrew's refusal to downsize reflects more than nostalgia. It's a clinging to identity that no longer fits. As the monarchy distances itself from scandal, the question becomes whether it can sever ties cleanly, or whether Andrew's internal resistance will prolong one of the royal family's most uncomfortable sagas. Prince Andrew is running out of time. The Royal Lodge move-out clock is ticking toward 2026, but you wouldn't know it from inside the estate. Behind the gates of his sprawling Windsor home, chaos reigns, not from moving vans or packing tape, but from something much harder to shift: denial. For months now, staff have been quietly sounding the alarm, and the issue goes way beyond a late start. The problem? Andrew is a hoarder, a serious one. What should have been a logistical transition has spiraled into a near-operational crisis. Rooms are stuffed with unopened Amazon boxes, dusty stacks of documents, decades-old royal gifts, and, in a twist that had become both meme and nightmare, an expansive collection of teddy bears. Yes, fully grown, scandal-tainted, 60-something Prince Andrew is reportedly emotionally tethered to stuffed animals. Staff have attempted to intervene, but their efforts aren't just met with resistance, they are met with rules. According to insiders, Andrew insists on personally approving what stays and what goes. The man won't even let others touch his things, and the sheer volume of possessions has turned every room into an obstacle course. Forget organizing a proper move. Right now, they're just trying to create walkable paths through the clutter. Even more bizarre, some removals are happening at night. Covert operations.
If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update.
Staff are reportedly packing and transporting items to Crown Estate storage facilities under cover of darkness. It's the only way to move things without triggering another emotional episode. The entire operation is being handled like a state secret, not because of national security, but because of embarrassment. It's not just the amount of stuff, it's a meaning Andrew assigns to it. Those teddy bears? They are not just collectibles, they're emotional companions. Sources claim he talks about them like they are feelings, and has been known to lash out when they are moved or misplaced. His resistance to letting go isn't just about nostalgia, it's rooted in control, and perhaps fear. Let's not forget, Andrew's future is shrinking. Royal Lodge, once a symbol of his status, is slipping through his fingers, and instead of preparing for that loss, he's clinging harder. The hoarding isn't a side issue. It's the issue. It's why staff are burning out, why storage trucks keep rolling in, and why the exit date keeps looking more like a fantasy than a plan. The 2026 deadline was supposed to bring closure. But even now, insiders say there's been little measurable progress. It's not just a messy house. It's a man refusing to downsize in every sense of the word. And this is all happening under a cloud of public scrutiny. The royal family is already trying to distance itself from the scandal of Andrew's past. But how do you clean up an image when the man can't even clean out a hallway? People inside the palace are reportedly frustrated. The logistics of this move are only part of the problem. What they are dealing with is emotional immobility. Every item, every box, every old photo is a reason to delay. The physical clutter mirrors the internal chaos, and no one's been able to break through it. And while we're here, the weight of Andrew's past controversies hasn't gone anywhere. His name remains tied to Jeffrey Epstein, and no amount of selective attendance at royal events can change that. Images continue to surface, photos linking him to Epstein and others like Bill Gates, renewing public anger and casting long shadows over every step he takes. The irony is brutal. He is still attending family gatherings, still wearing the uniform, but is also the man with sealed boxes piled to the ceiling, trying to pretend life is normal. There's a sharp contrast between public image and private reality. The palace may try to curate one narrative, but the one inside Royal Lodge tells a different story. Andrew's refusal to accept help is a recurring theme. From legal scandals to moving logistics, he shuts down intervention. Staff can't sort items without his go-ahead. Advisors can't force the issue without causing a scene. And no one, it seems, can touch the teddy bears. This isn't about clutter, it's about control. Reports say he is especially protective of personal archives. Letters, photos, documents. He won't let them out of his sight. The result? Whole rooms off limits. Areas of Royal Lodge are now inaccessible because of the build-up. At this point, it's less a residence and more a storage bunker. The pressure is building. The Crown needs Royal Lodge available. Other members of the family could use the property. But with every delay, Andrew's grip on the estate seems harder to break. It's as if giving up the lodge means giving up everything he once was, and is not ready to face that. There's talk of moving him to a smaller home on the Sandringham estate, a major downgrade, from 30 rooms and manicured grounds to something modest and functional. But even that plan seems aspirational, because first, he has to leave, and right now, even that is in question. Adding another twist, reports suggest Andrew might spend considerable time abroad, particularly in Bahrain. Word is, there's a luxury residence waiting for him there, far from the public eye, far from the lodge, and far from the teddy bear chaos. But if the goal is escape, it leaves behind one massive mess in Windsor. Even if he relocates overseas, the issue of Royal Lodge doesn't disappear. The property must be cleared, sanitized, and reclaimed. But until Andrew emotionally detaches, none of that can happen, and so far, he's shown zero interest in doing so. Sources close to the palace say they are walking on eggshells. Every conversation about the move is carefully worded. No one wants to trigger another delay. The hope was that time would wear him down, that proximity to 2026 would naturally push things forward. But so far, it's only revealed how deep the resistance goes. In many ways, the Royal Lodge saga has become a symbol, not just of Andrew's personal struggle, but of the monarchy's larger problem: how to manage those who refuse to adapt. This isn't just about square footage. It's about identity, status, and legacy, and none of those fit neatly into moving boxes. So here we are, approaching another royal deadline with no clear path forward. Andrew's departure was supposed to signal a new chapter, a quiet removal of a problematic figure. Instead, it's become a drawn-out performance, complete with secret removals, emotional breakdowns, and holes filled with forgotten things. Whether he finally leaves in 2026 or finds another excuse to delay, the damage is already done. The clutter isn't just physical, it's institutional. And as long as Andrew stays surrounded by possessions he can't part with, the royal family remains tethered to a past it keeps trying to escape. If you think this saga is as surreal as it sounds, make sure to hit like, drop a comment with your take, and subscribe for more royal chaos. Because something tells us the Royal Lodge drama is far from over. At this point, Andrew's attachment to Royal Lodge feels less like nostalgia and more like delusion. His clinging to the past with both hands, as if by preserving every trinket and unopened parcel, he can stop time. But it's not working. The more he hoards, the more public interest grows. The more he resists, the more attention he draws. It's the paradox of royal controversy. You try to hide, and everyone looks closer. What was supposed to be a quiet transition has become a symbol of dysfunction. And while the palace might prefer to handle it behind closed doors, the optics of the situation are louder than ever. Staff morale is reportedly at an all-time low. They've been tasked with managing not just a property, but a person in denial. According to one insider, it's less about physical labor now and more like walking into a therapy session. Every box is a memory. Every drawer is a debate. It's exhausting. The use of Crown Estate storage hasn't solved the problem. It's just moved it temporarily. Trucks come in at night, boxes get loaded under floodlights, and no one talks about it in the morning. It's a quiet disaster with a royal crest on the envelope. There's only so long you can keep pretending this is normal. What makes it worse is the contrast with other royals. While some members of the family are trying to modernize and rebrand, Andrew is stuck in the 90s, both mentally and materially. Everyone else is downsizing, streamlining, stepping into carefully curated media roles. Meanwhile, Andrew is dodging intervention and debating which teddy bears to keep. The monarchy, whether it admits it or not, is in clean-up mode. But as long as Andrew remains at Royal Lodge, surrounded by clutter and scandal, is a walking reminder of the palace's inability to deal with its own mess. It's not just his problem anymore, it's everyone's PR headache. Even among those who still support him, patience is wearing thin. Friends who once defended his character are now stepping back. The hoarding isn't quirky, it's concerning. Some have even described his behavior as regressive, like he's retreating into a fantasy version of his past to avoid confronting his present. There's a sense that Andrew knows what's coming. He just refuses to face it. The smaller house at Sandringham, the diminishing royal role, the ongoing public scrutiny, it's all closing in. And instead of preparing, he's doubling down on control. The bears stay. The boxes stay. The denial stays. And it's not like the property is some cozy cottage. Royal Lodge is massive, 30 rooms, extensive grounds, historical significance. The idea that one man is occupying that space while refusing to clear it is bordering on absurd. Even by royal standards, this is overkill. By now, it's clear that the lodge isn't just a residence to Andrew. It's a last stand. The longer he holds on, the more symbolic it becomes. If he gives it up, he gives up his last thread of royal privilege. The problem? No one else sees it that way. To the palace, it's an asset. To Andrew, it's identity. This emotional standoff can't go on forever, but there's no plan B. Every time someone tries to push a solution, more help, more deadlines, even just conversations, it reportedly ends in silence or shut down. The resistance is complete, and the longer it goes on, the harder it is to untangle. One source described the dynamic like trying to evict your own shadow. Every time you make progress, it slips right back into place. The boxes get removed, and then more appear. A hallway gets cleared, and the next day it's blocked again. It's a cycle, not a process. All of this is still happening under the umbrella of scandal. Andrew's link to Jeffrey Epstein hasn't disappeared, no matter how many statements or photo ops the palace offers. The public hasn't forgotten. Every time his name trends, it's rarely about royal duties. It's about allegations, lawsuits, and questions that never got proper answers. And while the move from Royal Lodge is framed as a logistical decision, it's impossible to separate it from the damage control narrative. It's not just about making room, it's about reducing visibility. But as long as Andrew keeps turning a routine move into a slow-motion meltdown, that goal stays out of reach. There are whispers that the palace underestimated him, that they thought he'd quietly comply, maybe even disappear from the headlines. But Andrew hasn't gone quietly. If anything, he's managed to create more tension by refusing to budge, literally. It's a PR nightmare disguised as a packing problem. What started as a plan to transition him out has morphed into a metaphor for everything the royal family struggles with: internal resistance, emotional dysfunction, and the inability to fully cut ties with its most controversial figures. Royal Lodge is a physical embodiment of unresolved royal baggage. For now, the deadline remains 2026. But at the current pace, that year could arrive with the same unopened boxes still stacked by the windows. Staff are reportedly keeping logs, trying to track what's been moved and what mysteriously reappears. It's less like moving house and more like staging a royal exorcism. And as much as the family might want to avoid confrontation, there's only so long they can tiptoe around this. At some point, someone is going to have to say the thing no one wants to say. Enough. Enough delays, enough excuses, enough teddy bears. But that confrontation risks triggering another wave of backlash, and that's a risk they may not be willing to take. Because what happens when Andrew is finally forced to leave? What does that look like? Will the bears come with him? Will he oversee every box himself? Will the palace stage a cleanup operation the second the door closes behind him? The logistics are one thing. The optics are another. No matter how quietly they try to handle it, people will notice. Because this isn't just about Andrew leaving Royal Lodge. It's about what's left behind. The clutter, the controversy, the broken image of a man who once stood on balconies and now clutches childhood toys like they are shields against reality. What makes a Royal Lodge situation so uniquely uncomfortable is that it's not just private dysfunction, it's visible and it's symbolic. The longer the mess remains, the more it represents the monarchy's struggle with modern relevance and internal accountability. A royal house bursting with unsorted clutter feels like an unintentional metaphor for the institution itself. And for the public watching all this unfold, there's little sympathy left. At a time when the monarchy is trying to project order, discipline, and evolution, this kind of behind-the-scenes chaos is a contradiction they can't explain away. The public may not see every teddy bear, but they can smell the dysfunction from Windsor to Westminster. Those who know Andrew well say he's always been stubborn, but this chapter feels like something else entirely. It's not just resistance, it's regression. There's a childlike emotionality to the way he's reacting, a desperate refusal to accept limits, downsizing, or any form of consequence. The man who once flew around the world on royal tours now refuses to part with boxes of unopened mail. The fact that his identity has become so entangled with the property only underlines how far his public life has contracted. Royal Lodge isn't just a home to him. It's his last symbol of autonomy. And for someone whose royal role was stripped, whose reputation is damaged beyond repair, losing the lodge feels like losing the last thing he had control over. It's hard not to compare his situation to how the rest of the royals have adapted, however reluctantly. Prince Harry, for all the drama and departures, made a clean break. Even disgraced figures in history made swifter exits than this. Andrew's saga is dragging on because no one seems able or willing to force the issue. The palace is likely terrified of the optics. A forced eviction would be humiliating. A public fight would revive headlines that the family desperately wants to keep buried. And so the solution has been avoidance. Quiet pressure, private pleading, late-night storage trucks. But at some point, those tactics stop being subtle and start looking spineless. And it's not like it's being asked to move into a bedsit. The replacement property on the Sandringham estate is modest by royal standards, but still comfortably upper crust. Yet the very idea of it seems offensive to Andrew. It's not big enough. It's not Royal Lodge. It doesn't have the history or the perceived status. And worst of all, it feels like a public demotion. There are hints he might prefer to spend more time abroad instead, especially in places like Bahrain, where he has reportedly cultivated friendships and luxury accommodations. And if that happens, it raises a different question. Will he even come back to finish the move? Or will he vanish into a foreign retreat and leave Royal Lodge behind like a time capsule no one wants to open? Either way, someone's going to be stuck with the cleanup. And if current trends hold, it won't be Andrew. The staff already tasked with this nightmare aren't just cleaning. They're negotiating emotions, avoiding conflict, and documenting every decision in case it backfires. It's move management meets emotional triage. The strategy seems to be slow pressure, but that clock is running out. 2026 is getting closer, and with each month that passes, the odds of a clean transition get slimmer. Unless something changes, and soon, this will all end in one of two ways. Another scandal, or a silent operation carried out behind the scenes while Andrew's conveniently away. From the royal institution's perspective, the delay is a nightmare. It contradicts the image they are desperately trying to promote, a modern monarchy, efficient, discreet, above the fray. And yet here's Prince Andrew, holding up the process with boxes of clutter and a refusal to engage. The more they let him delay, the more control they lose. And it's not just about physical space. It's about message control, reputational boundaries, and public trust. Every week this story stays alive, the more it chips away at the palace's credibility. And frankly, the public has already drawn their conclusions. Andrew's behavior is telling. The hoarding, the secrecy, the emotional volatility, it all paints a picture of a man who hasn't accepted where he stands. To the outside world, he's a former working royal with a tarnished record. But in his mind, it seems he still believes he's owed a certain lifestyle, a certain reverence. Letting go of Royal Lodge isn't just about space. It's about surrender. And surrender isn't something he's prepared to do. So instead, he digs in, keeps the lights dim, the hallways cluttered, the bears untouched. And all the while, the clock ticks closer to a date that's starting to feel more like fantasy than fact. It's easy to focus on the absurd parts, grown man, dozens of teddy bears, late-night box removals, but underneath it all is something more sobering. This isn't just petty or eccentric. It's about a man collapsing under the weight of what he used to be. And no one around him seems able to change that. In that way, Royal Lodge is both fortress and prison. It protects him from the outside world, but it also locks him into a version of himself that no longer exists. And the more he resists leaving, the more he reinforces that stasis. The very walls he's clinging to are the same ones keeping him from moving forward. This could have been a quiet exit, a smooth, if slightly awkward, move. But now it's something else. A slow-motion collapse. A test of how far royal privilege stretches when accountability is inconvenient. The royal family wants him gone. The public wants him invisible. But Andrew wants to keep the lodge and all the baggage inside it. Even the symbolism of this being his last stronghold isn't lost on anyone. Once he's out of Royal Lodge, there's nothing left tethering him to the inner workings of the monarchy. And he knows that. That's why the move isn't happening. That's why the boxes stay sealed. That's why every logistical effort turns into emotional gridlock. The most uncomfortable truth in all of this, he might not leave, not on time, not voluntarily. The 2026 timeline is already being treated like more of a hope than a deadline. And given how deeply dug in he seems, it's entirely plausible he'll still be there well into the future, surrounded by unopened boxes, clinging to the last bit of image he thinks he has. And if it comes to that, then what? Does the palace send in a cleanup team? Do they quietly repurpose the estate around him? Do they make concessions to avoid another tabloid disaster? None of the options are great, and that's exactly why the situation has dragged on for so long. What we're seeing isn't just one man's refusal to move. It's the royal institution's inability to enforce change when it means facing internal discomfort. This isn't about one property. It's about legacy, control, and the cost of enabling someone for too long. And the real question, what does this say about the monarchy as a whole? If they can't manage one person's exit from a single estate, how are they supposed to project stability, power, and vision for the future? The Royal Lodge isn't just cluttered with boxes, it's cluttered with consequences. So if you're just as stunned as the rest of us that this is still dragging out, hit the like button, drop a comment with your theory on whether he'll actually leave, and make sure you're subscribed, because this royal drama is aging like one of those unopened boxes, dusty, chaotic, and somehow still full of surprises.